This is the Elsa B. Smith Show. I help people to understand the magic and the mystery of love and life so that they can regain control of their lives. What would you like to resolve? The topic of tonight's show is about wanting a purposeful life. With this area of social media, we are all getting very concerned about having a purposeful life. And because there's so much in the air, literally in the air, in terms of living in a social media era, we are really concerned about how we can get a purpose in life. So we have less physical contact with people, we have more contact in terms of social media. And that makes us feel quite alone at times. So what do? We pay a guru to help us understand what our life purpose is. Or we can get information about what our life purpose is from a higher level. I have published a book called Shine. There's a chapter in that book that tells us exactly what our life purpose is. Here's the quote. We are here to help you focus on finding inner peace. And no, that is not a cliche. Inner peace is a result of resolving inner conflict. Whenever you make peace with a part of yourself, that part of yourself turns into light and you become both lighter and more visible in the world. Your life purpose is to strive towards resolving all the inner conflict that you chose to carry into this existence. As you do this, you become more whole and you get closer to being a light being. How can you hasten the process? By acknowledging your inner conflict and working towards resolving it. And yes, you have to resolve the conflict because it is your conflict and your division. Blessings to you. That was the quote from the book. So, what is your conflict and what is the conflict that you need to resolve, that you need to take ownership of? I'm going to describe this for you on a number of different levels. Firstly, we can look at this conflict in terms of just daily stuff that's happening. Stuff at work, in terms of the job, stuff that you don't like, that you have conflict with because you don't want to do it. People at work that you have conflict with. Family issues, all sorts of family issues that result in conflict and that brings strife into family, and then you don't want to deal with those family issues. You have conflict with friends. You know, we have friendships that sometimes you haven't seen or talked to a person for about 3-4 months, and you think, oh, that's okay. The friendship seems to have gone to its natural conclusion, and you're not too fussed about losing a friend in that way. But sometimes you actually have conflict, serious conflict, and that is an abrupt end to a friendship. But it's only an end to a friendship on a physical level. You carry that conflict with you for a very long time until and unless you resolve it. Or you could be in a relationship and you think, yeah, it's about living happily ever after, but then the relationship runs into issues. Now, is that conflict the end of the relationship, or is it what I would like to call changing gears in a relationship? So that's the kind of conflict that we have to accept, understand, and resolve on a daily basis, because that's part of our daily work, daily life, our consciousness. This conflict that we are here to resolve can also be expressed in terms of health issues, because your physical body is very often an expression of spiritual issues that you need to resolve. Now, those spiritual issues cause blockages in your physical body, and that results in health issues that you need to resolve. So there's a start already. If our life purpose is to strive towards resolving all the inner conflict that we chose to carry into this existence, like this message from the Pleiades says, then we've got our hands full already. But I want to take it even to a deeper level, where it's not just conflict with people that you get into contact with on a daily basis. It's also conflict around bigger issues that impact on groups of people. I'll give you 3 examples and how I personally have dealt with them. The first issue is around gender issues. People who are different from me and who have a different gender expression. I happen to be heterosexual in this life. That's just a choice that I made. That's absolutely fine with me. And I will tell you about an incident that happened with me many years ago when I was still a psychology student. I was in a class with a professor that I really had a lot of respect for up to that time. And he made a statement. He said that if a gay person comes to you for counseling, you can only accept that gay person for counseling if, in the first place, they acknowledge that they are wrong by being gay and that they are willing to change. Now, I grew up in a very conservative part of the world, and being gay was not part of my frame of reference. However, when that professor made that statement, I felt the strongest possible emotional reaction. My reaction was, how dare you? How dare you judge people before you even know who they are? If they are gay, that is their choice. Let them be. There is nothing wrong with it, just as there is nothing wrong with me being heterosexual. Those are choices that we made before we came into this life. Now, for me, that was a really significant moment in my life. On that basis, I just know that any issues related to gender are not part of my conflict that I need to resolve in this world. I expressed my dislike of that statement from that professor at the time, and that's it. That is my view on that. Another issue that I consciously had to make a decision about, and that was not such an emotional issue for me, is around race. Now, being South African, I grew up in an environment where race and racial differences cause a lot of issues. How did I deal with that? It wasn't really an issue for me all my life, up to a point where, again, I was doing my internship on the way to becoming an industrial psychologist. And my supervisor gave me a stack of psychometric tests that I needed to score. Those psychometric tests were all written by black males. Now, today it wouldn't be an issue for me at all, but at the time, it was a real issue for me. And I actually went back to my supervisor and I said to her, look, I don't think I'm equipped to do this. I cannot score these results for black males because I know nothing about them. I don't know their culture. I don't understand how their minds work. And she said to me something that to this day I still remember. She said to me, don't look for the differences, look for the similarities. And that really stuck with me. And in that sense, the whole issue of race and racial conflict has for me really just been an intellectual thing. I didn't know, I didn't understand how to deal with it. She gave me the key, problem solved. So if there's a racial conflict today, my response is kind of, get over it. Look for the similarities. Don't look for the differences. Another issue that is really the cause of a lot of conflict in these days is around religion. Also something that I had to deal with on a very, very personal level. Because I was brought up in a very strict Protestant environment. And then I'm psychic. And it's wrong to be psychic. So I had to really make peace with all the conflict around being psychic. So that for me was a spiritual journey. And I made peace with it. And I'm actually okay with it. So for those 3 issues that impact on a broader group, I had to make peace with that. And from that point of view, I understand the whole issue around having a life purpose. But there's now an even bigger life purpose that impacts on absolutely all of us. Now, I am not going to bring politics into this show because that's not what it is about. What I will say is that for me personally, I have been involved, I've been on the receiving end of politics in South Africa, where politicians do whatever they want. I have been on the receiving end of politics in the UK, where I was one of the voters in this whole Brexit thing. And I have been a spectator on what has been happening in the United States, like most of the rest of the world have been happening. And for me, that is probably the biggest part of having a life purpose, which relates to resolving conflict. If you look at what these politicians are doing, if you look at what is happening in these countries, it is so easy to blame them. It is so easy to point the finger and to say, what are you doing about this? How can you be so wrong? What are you doing to change my world? I voted for you, but that is not what I anticipated. I think probably the biggest message in terms of having a life purpose and managing conflict from all these political issues is that it is about taking responsibility, about taking personal responsibility. This is not about a politician doing something. This is about looking at what is happening in the world in terms of politics and all sorts of other things and saying, I am taking responsibility. Yes, I can blame every politician in sight, but how do I take responsibility? I see a lot of dishonesty. Am I always honest? If I'm not, how do I deal with it? I hear a lot of lies. Am I always honest in what I'm saying and what I'm doing? How do I make the world a better place? By actually taking complete responsibility for my own behavior, for my own actions, for my own words, even for my own thoughts. Because we know in this world of social media, even a thought can go around the world in record time. So this whole issue of having a life purpose, of striving towards resolving conflict, has now come to the surface for the whole of humanity. That is our life purpose. It's all about dealing with those issues, and it's about dealing with any challenge you face, not just those I mentioned, but any challenge and any personal challenge you face. First thing, acknowledge the emotions. Secondly, find the wisdom. So with acknowledge the emotions, I mean acknowledge that you have really strong emotions. Deal with those emotions. Get to a point where you can look down on the emotions and where they no longer dictate to you. Then find the wisdom in the experience. What is it that makes you a better, stronger, wiser person from going through this conflict, from dealing with this issue? Then also, another way of discovering what your life script is about is to use tarot. Those of you who know me well will know that I have quite firm views on tarot. Tarot is not meant for divination and for fortune telling. Tarot is there for us to identify and understand the wisdom. And you can look at the minor arcana in tarot that gives us an indication of where to find conflict and how to deal with it. What is the main focus of that conflict in your life? Is it the cups, which relates to emotions? Are you a very strongly emotional person? Is your issue around relationships? Do you have many complicated, complex relationships in your life where you have to actually ask what you can learn from the people involved in these relationships? Because if you have lots of complicated relationships, guess who's the common denominator in those relationships? It's you. Or is your conflict around spiritual experiences? Like I said, my conflict was around being psychic in an environment where being psychic is a sin. That made me a sinner, but it also made me, this is who I am. So what's so wrong about that? I needed to make peace with that. Or is your life path and your major parts of conflict around pentacles, material aspects? Do you have an issue with money? Do you have an issue with money being the root of all evil? Because money is not the root of all evil. Money is, for me, money is a form of exchanging energy. Is your major issue around career or career choices that you made? Maybe you are happy in your career, in your job, but your career always requires you to make really significant choices. If you are, for example, a police officer or a medical doctor in any area where you have to constantly focus on finding the best solution and putting your emotions aside so that you can make the world a better place in that way. Maybe that's where your focus lies in terms of your life purpose and resolving conflict. Or maybe in terms of the minor arcana, your focus is on the swords, which is justice, truth, ethics. Is it important for you to always want to do the right thing? Is it important for you to understand? And are you concerned about not understanding things? You always want to know what is behind things. Or is it around the wands in minor arcana? Is your conflict around creativity, around not wanting to accept the world as it is and wanting to make the world a better place? Is that what your conflict is about? So there's all sorts of issues around conflict that we deal with on a daily basis. So maybe there's a surprise for you that you expected to be to hear from your life purpose should be to be a teacher or a fireman or a nurse or whatever it is, or that your life purpose is to be a mother. Yeah, it's all of that, but it is about identifying and resolving conflict. That is what this life is about. What is your challenge? Why is it a challenge for you? And how do you learn from those challenges? If you want to know more, this book that I refer to, the book called Shine, is available on Amazon. It's on Kindle, it's on paperback, and it's also available as an audiobook. There's some really lovely stuff in there. It was all channeled by me, and I give huge credit to those that gave me that lovely information. Thank you for watching.